Well, hi there, guys. It's Tony here from Caveman Props, and I'm back today with another one of my prop talks videos. I'm quite excited about today because, as a prop maker, as myself, even though it's private and for like cosplay, when you start making something, you want to start with reference images. So we go around looking on the internet for film stills and like behind the scenes pictures. One of the best things you can get hold of, obviously, is some of the concept artwork, like what I've got on the wall behind me here. So what I'm doing today is I have a concept designer, someone that does this work. So we're going to learn a little bit more about this process, which will be brilliant, because this is the artwork that the prop makers will have. So this is the most valuable piece of stuff that we can find. So today, my guest, ladies and gentlemen, is Matthew Savage.
Hi, how are you?
Not too bad. Thank you for joining us today.
You're very welcome.
Okay, so what I want to do with these videos is we try and like broad scope it, but we're going to talk about some of the stuff you've like worked on. But I kind of want to know a little bit more about your process. So, but I also want to know how you kind of got started. So we're going to go back to the very beginning. How did you get started as like a concept designer?
I started drawing Daleks in primary school. That would be sort of my first sort of hint that this was going to be something I wanted to do. I sort of I grew up really enjoying film and TV and really enjoying drawing and designing. That was kind of how I spent my my misspent youth. And then I went after school. I went to art school, and then I did a degree in they called it multimedia at the time, multimedia and product design. And I wasn't really thinking about a career in film, but it was kind of in the back of my head. And then after I graduated, it was the only thing I wanted to do. So I reworked my portfolio with a sort of film and TV angle. And I started to do things like work experience and essentially the tea and coffee round on a couple of movies. And I sort of slowly, over a couple of films and a couple of jobs, I made a few contacts. And at that point, I was about 23 or 4. Doctor Who, it was announced Doctor Who was coming back. And I was in the right place at the right time. And it sort of felt inconceivable to me as a fan that I wouldn't be involved. So I spearheaded an attempt to work on the show, which eventually paid off.
So it all kind of started from that. So starting from Doctor Who, but then obviously you moved into the film industry as well.
Yeah, I did. I worked on Doctor Who for about only 2 seasons. I sort of came back and did a bit on later seasons, and I did a bit when Matt Smith came back. I worked on that his first block of episodes. And I did Doctor Who as a concept designer for 2 years, and we got to do the Daleks and the TARDIS, all those kind of fun things with Ed, the production designer. And then I moved to Torchwood as for season 1 as an art director, sort of looking after a couple of the things, because Ed became very busy because he was running Doctor Who and then Torchwood and then eventually Sarah Jane at the same time. So he sort of deputized certain design responsibilities to different people, and he gave me a few things to look after on Torchwood. And I did that for a year. And then I moved back into sort of the studio films, the slightly bigger budget sort of Hollywood films that are made here. And I've been doing that since about 2008, I think. I think the first one after Torchwood was The Dark Knight. I was working on a couple of aspects of the bike in that film. And then different bits and bobs all the way up to the Star Wars films that have been made here.
There's been quite a varied amount of work that comes along.
Yeah, we've been very lucky. Almost in the time, with a few dips, since I've been in the film industry, it's been very busy. The last 10 years particularly has been sort of non-stop with work. It was a bit quieter before then, but we are lucky. I mean, it's a good time to be in the industry because right now, all the stages post-COVID, all the stages in the UK are full with sort of really fun projects. So it's it's a healthy time.
So going back, when you get a project brief or something you have to work on, what kind of information do you get, and how do you work through the process of creating something?
It changes on every job. There's sort of no sort of hard and fast way. The standard process is generally script first. If you're able to read the script, it might be too secretive, which is a pain. But if you can read the script and you know the story beats, because a prop or a set or a vehicle will have to have some kind of interaction with an actor, or they might, if it's a weapon, they might have to reload it. And if that's scripted, then that sort of works its way into the design. Often take a meeting with, if you're doing prop work, you'll be working with the prop master. Hopefully you can take a meeting with the director, because they're going to have their own, he or she is going to have their own sort of take on the prop or take on the vehicle. They're going to come with maybe sometimes they'll give you some research they've done. I like to do my own research anyway, kind of source imagery, anything, that would be having met with the director, you've had your brief, the script requirements of a prop. At that point, you do some research. I mean, it depends on the time frame. The longer you have them, I could research your day. It's the most sort of informative part of doing anything, because otherwise you're going on what you remember, and if you don't do your research, you're only going to sort of churn out ideas you've had in the past, churn out ideas from other films. And so research is kind of the genesis in terms of, you find finishes and, mechanisms, anything like that. And then when you're ready to draw, my personal process is to design the silhouette first, because that's the most readable aspect of the design. If you look at the concept art on your walls, they're all, it's very silhouette-y, that's the iconic, shape is that silhouette. That's what's going to read. So silhouette, then the volume. So when you find you might do a page of thumbnails of silhouettes, really quick, loose, just black on white. Then you find your volume, different weights of the design. And the last bit is always detail. So, any sort of rivets or color finishes, or that's kind of the fun stuff, but that should come at the very end of the process. So it's always silhouette, volume, and then detail. And then you show the director, and it's all wrong, and you go again and rinse, repeat.
I do understand what you mean there with the silhouette, because with some very iconic props, you can literally just recognize them. I'm pretty sure there's a T-shirt somewhere with props on it, just as silhouettes, and they're all instantly recognizable. So that's a wonderful place to actually start from. I really kind of get that idea, and then add in the details.
It's what reads the easiest. If you think about the Star Destroyer at the beginning of Star Wars, it's just a triangle coming over. So the first thing you read is the silhouette, and then you see the volume, you see where the engines are, you get the size of, you get the feel for the scope, and then you see, you punch in for all the details. So, but silhouette every time is the, with props, vehicles. So that should always be your kind of your keystone for the design.
When you've designed something, like you've been asked to design a weapon or something, and you've designed it, it's all come out of your head, you've researched it, got it on paper. What does it feel like to see the prop actually made and see something that you've created become a physical item?
It's the absolute best. I've been very lucky all the way back to Doctor Who. I worked with some on season 1. I worked with 2 guys, Mark Caudry and Nick Rabato, and then all the way up to Star Wars and the prop makers. I've got to work with the best prop makers, and they treat the designs really respectfully. But to see something, in 2D, to see when the prop makers take it off the page, and often in translating a design to a physical object, the prop makers have to reinterpret certain aspects. And often on Star Wars, they'll come back and say, if you move that hinge down to here, it's going to open easier. And every time I've followed their advice, it's made the design better, actually. So the design process is collaborative, and it's back and forth. And when because prop makers obviously have more experience in the physical world building stuff than I do, so they'll come back with just ideas, or they'll have a hinge they've been saving to use. And when you can kind of hit that collaborative back and forth, it just makes everything better. It makes the design better, makes any movement better. But when they're built and you get to go and see them, or when you see them on set, or even in the cinema, it's very, very rewarding. And that hasn't got old yet.
So you still obviously quite enjoy it, because everything's new. Everything you design is not just it's the same thing. Everything's different, isn't it?
It's if you get to move around different productions, and you get to try different things, organic-y designs, hard surface. If you can keep that interesting, then I'm still really enjoying work. I'm I think 15 or 16 years in now, and I'm still really having a good time. You get really hard productions, or really long, tough days every now and again, but on the whole, it's still fun. So
one of the questions I want to ask, obviously you quite enjoy seeing the real prop makers make your prop and seeing it on screen. How do you feel about people like myself that do cosplay and things, and if they've recreated one of your props, how do you feel about that? Do you look at that and go, that's my design, or is it something you quite enjoy seeing again?
I find that deeply flattering, actually. It's a really lovely thing, and I see it crop up on social media and online, and it's just very, very, it's a heartwarming. It's a real privilege to work on some of these jobs anyway, and if anyone likes that work enough, I mean, it's a compliment to me, and it's a compliment to the prop makers that someone felt moved enough to do it. So it's nothing but sort of good feelings about that. It's lovely.
That's brilliant, because I'm hoping to get somebody on the show that they did work on computer games design,
right?
And I remember speaking to them, and they said they absolutely love it, because their concept of something on the computer game was only ever supposed to be in the computer world, and then suddenly they see it in somebody doing it in real life is completely amazing.
Yes, love it. I mean, I've worked in video games and I've worked in film, but I really enjoy both. But personally, the working in film, when you get to see things physically built, that's it's a very bizarre feeling. If something has been, if a set design has been in your head and you draw it, and then it goes through art directors and construction, and then to step into something that was once in your head and now it's consuming you physically it's a very weird but very, very satisfying feeling.
So obviously, at the moment, things haven't been particularly the greatest for a lot of people with the lockdown and COVID. How has that affected your work, especially with the first lockdown where we had everything kind of stopped?
I was very fortunate. I'm working on a production at the moment, and I'm doing sort of set design and vehicles and things like that. And as we locked down and they stopped shooting, they moved me briefly into sort of the VFX post work, because VFX could keep working because they're on computers, they could work from home. So I did sort of matte shot design and VFX sort of art direction for about 5 or 6 weeks into that first very hard lockdown, where all the production shut down, which was obviously unprecedented for everyone. And then eventually they shut everything down that I was working on. So I did take 7 or 8 weeks off work, maybe a bit more, and freelance. That's it. Everything was shut down. But bar that, as soon as we got up and running again, I've been back on, and I've worked. I went back. I can't remember, June or July of last year, and then I've been working ever since. So it hasn't really affected me too badly. I certainly, in the COVID lottery, I can't complain. And I'm working on a production that's in Hungary anyway, so I've been working from home and going over for visits. And unfortunately, COVID shut down my sort of travel plans to go back over to Budapest. But now, no, I've been working from home, and I imagine I'll work from home, I don't know, not indefinitely, but at least for quite a bit longer.
So it hasn't affected you that much. You just had to make a little detour just to keep yourself busy.
No, it's been fine. It would have been nice to go back over to Hungary for a couple more meetings and see how they're getting on, but it's no, it's been fun.
Okay. So obviously I have to ask, you've obviously got a few projects coming up. Is there anything you're allowed to talk to us about on that, of what's to come?
Yeah, I'm working on Halo at the moment, which is a big TV production based on the video game. That's been a really long-term job, and it's been just the most sort of rewarding job I've done in years, actually. That's been really good fun. And yeah, I mean, 2 or 3 years ago, I did some proppy work on the new Batman film, but I've lost track of when that's coming out, because I think it should have been out by now, but obviously they've only just wrapped filming because of COVID. So, but since I finished on Star Wars about 2.5 years ago, I think, and then I briefly did some Batman work, and I've been on Halo for 2 years now.
Cool. So that's quite a long-term project.
I
feel like a TV project can be long-term.
For a freelancer, I mean, I think that's kind of where it's at now for me, is these big sort of long-form TV shows, because they have a similar budget to, a big movie. So you can do some really super ambitious design work. But they're making 10, they're making a season of it now. So instead of, an hour and a half of work, I'm shooting, they're shooting, I don't know, I think the shoot on Halo is months and months. So it just means more work, more fun work, but at a at a movie level in terms of production value. I love it. I think these big TV shows they're great for me.
So you're obviously still enjoying it, and there's still work coming in for you.
There's right now. I mean, I'm sure it will change, and you have busy and quiet periods. Right now, there's just I can't do all the work I'm being offered to do. I've been turning down so many things to stay on Halo because I'm very happy there. But I think I'm 2.5 years in, so I must be coming to the end of that. As a freelancer, I've never been on a job for more than 8 or 9 months, and often they're shorter. So, a good long run of work is great.
So obviously I need to ask the question, what are some of the props or like set designs that you've worked on that you are like the most proud of, things that people would automatically recognize?
Sure. Well, the thing that keeps coming back is the bronze Dalek from season 1 of Doctor Who. That sort of that was a dream come true. There's a couple of jobs I've done where I've turned up and I haven't needed to do any research because I just know the geometry of a Dalek. I've known the number of panels and domes since I was 5 years old from just drawing them over and over again. So the Dalek is sort of working on that was a joy. A few things from Doctor Who, Captain Jack's gun. That's so long ago I can't really remember. More recently, things like Ray's blaster from The Force Awakens. I worked with the costume designer on The Martian on the Matt Damon spacesuit. That's quite a big one. That's kind of, I sort of dip in and out of costume. I tend to do sort of quite techie costume design if I ever get involved with that side of things.
Obviously, a spacesuit is quite a techie thing. It's more there's a collaboration between prop designers and costume designers, I'd assume.
It's all hard surface, so but I was an absolute joy because I got to work with Janty Yates, who's Ridley Scott's costume design, and she got me involved with the spacesuits she was doing for the Prometheus first of all, and then The Martian. But it's mainly been props on Star Wars. I worked on Rey's red lightsaber from The Rise of Skywalker. Loads of blasters in Star Wars. I mean, too many to mention. And then Halo. Obviously, I can't talk about that stuff yet, but I am so proud of what we've been doing on that. Sophie, the production designer, has just given me some of the most fun things to work on I think I've ever had the privilege to be involved with. It's I think it's a year away from being screened, sadly, because of COVID. So I'll have to come back and talk about those in a year's time.
That would be brilliant. I just want to obviously shoot back a little bit there when you sort of mentioned some of the blasters on Star Wars. Now there's a bit of history in the Star Wars blasters. They're based around classic guns because obviously when they started the first ones, to make it cheap, they started building them around classic guns. And I think the last time I looked, the replica props forum had 33 pages just on the Han Solo blaster alone of research images. Does it work like that? Because they still keep that, or is it complete new designs?
Well, the more Star Wars movies we did, I was working with Jamie Wilkinson, who was the prop master. And on The Force Awakens, we were kind of finding our feet and just trying to see how do you design a good Star Wars blaster? By the next film we did was Rogue One, he said, right, we will go to Bapti, who is the armorer who provided the Sterlings that they made the Stormtrooper rifles from originally. And we went there and we borrowed or photographed Mausers, Lugers, Lewis guns, anything period, from, I guess, from the 30s up to the 70s. And we tried almost exclusively on Rogue One to base them on period firearms, because that's just how you get that Star Wars look. It's the only way. And it's a really good place to start. We don't always, there's a few that were entirely original designs, but we did a blaster for Jin, the character Jin, and it was Jamie's idea. He put a Luger on my desk and said, "Give me a Star Wars blaster from that." And it's just a really good way. The whole Star Wars universe is based on found objects in terms of props. So I'm sure the lightsaber is a Graflex flash handle,
yeah,
and it's perfect because it's been engineered by someone who knows what they're doing to do a specific job. So there's plugs and there's clips and all kinds of things. And when I was a kid, I just looked at Luke's lightsaber and it was just, well, I know as a kid I didn't think this, but unconsciously I knew it did something. It had a purpose because someone has, an actual engineer has designed it to do this job. And it's the same with the Sterlings we use for the stormtroopers. There's a weathering and an existing design language that you just have to tweak or add, and it's perfect. It's still the best place to start.
Okay, well, Matthew, I think this is all the time we have for at the moment. I want to thank you for taking the time to speak to me today. It's been a real kind of pleasure to get an insight to the process of designing before it gets to the physical prop stage on that. So I just really want to thank you for taking the time today.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's always fun to sort of go down memory lane and talk about the fun things we get to do.
No worries. Take it. I will put a link to your website in the description for people to come, and you can take a look and have a look at some of the work that Matthew has worked on. It is absolutely amazing. So there we are, guys. That's all the time we have for today. Please like, please subscribe, and hopefully I will see you in the next video very soon.